So if we need help, so with supply, if we ever are confused about what direction it's going, we know that we have up right in the name as a mnemonic to let us know that it is upward sloping, right? It's got a positive rise and a positive run. So when we look at the slope, we're going to end up with, what is this, 1.5 over 2. Doesn't really matter. All that matters is that it's a positive number, right? Neither one of these rises or runs are negative. It's positive rise and it's positive run when we're doing that, very basic slope calculation. So supply curves are upward sloping, and these are reflections of the willingness and ability of producers to sell. Well, really of firms to produce and sell at different prices. Right, so we talked about pizza. We said, if this is the supply of pizza for Shadron, if the price, ends up being, somewhere that's, very low, around $2, right? A lot of people aren't going to be able to operate and produce pizza at such a low cost per slice or whatever, right? And so we're going to end up with, maybe 500 total slices of pizza sold over some particular period. Once the price increases, well, other places where it might not have been profitable, it is now profitable to open up, or maybe this place just decides to expand, or they decide to do a takeout window or something like that, right? Where they can do more business now because of the fact that the price is higher. And so at a higher price, suppliers as a group, just like when we're talking about demand, we're talking about consumers as a group. So when the price is higher, suppliers as a group supply more. And so on and so forth. So just like with demand, it's important for us to keep in mind that price changes never result in a shift in supply. Why? Because it's built into the supply curve. The supply curve is the way it is because of how suppliers react to price changes. So then the next logical question is, well, what does shift supply? What does impact supply, right? And I'm so glad you asked, because that's what we're talking about next. So the first thing that impacts supply, which is probably one of the easiest things for us to understand, right? Because we can all understand, at least conceptually, the idea of a lemonade stand, right? You got to buy lemons, you got to buy sugar, you got to use tap water or filtered water or whatever, right? And you make lemonade, you got to buy cups, you got to buy a stand, and then you sell the lemonade, right? Pretty easy business concept, right? True story, I was once a child actor, and one of the child actor things that I did was a video of me pretending to be a CEO of some company, I don't remember what it was, as a kid, running a lemonade stand with the other, like the co-CEO, and like doing all this, like all these like inside like business jokes, right? And it was like their like yearly corporate retreat, and they showed the video, and I got to go to it. But I mean, I was like 9 years old, right? Like I don't remember it, and honestly, I completely forgot about it until I just started talking about lemonade stands. So that random tangent. Things I wish I had that I could put on my YouTube channel, right? I also got paid to swim with dolphins for a whole day, and I still don't have a video of that. It was a failed Kids Line NBC pilot, failed NBC news pilot called Kids Line. And it happened right before 9/11, and so apparently, the executives at the different, news stations were not willing to, they didn't want to bite on kids telling the news, in the post 9/11 Iraq War days, right? Which, makes sense. Makes sense why it was not picked up. All right, back to the topic at hand. The first one, which makes the most sense, is going to be what we call our inputs or more colloquially known as factors of, no, not colloquially, more jargony, sorry, factors of production, or FOP. So you'll sometimes hear them referred to as inputs, sometimes referred to as factors of production, and really this is going to be all of the labor, capital, machinery that's used to produce goods and service. And so when any one of these three things becomes more expensive, right? Minimum wage increases. That's labor. That's one of our inputs. You know, the espresso machine, you know, needs to be replaced or needs to be maintained, right? That's a machinery cost. You know, the building is too small. We need to expand. That's a capital expansion, right? Buying new buildings, you know, installing. I mean, this was a capital expansion. Revamping this room and putting all these TVs and these desks in here like that, right? That was a increase in capital that the school put in to the Burkheiser building and the business department writ large. So
automation be a factor of production?
That's a great question.
It's still going to cost much money and you need people to maintain it as well.
Yes, it is. It comes under capital. So capital can be split into like physical capital, like intellectual capital, and then within intellectual capital, you know, you would have software. Now, what's interesting though, and honestly, I'm doing a paper on this right now where I'm like modeling with Dr. Gregory Moses over in the math department how automation, like how an increase in automation is going to impact our labor markets and like specifically like our Social Security and our Medicaid programs. And one of the things, so I've been reading up a ton on this, and also I love ChatGPT and all that stuff. It's wonderful. It's great. One of the things that I've been looking into all this stuff is, so economists like kind of talk about any kind of fear mongering about automation or AI or whatever as just that, as fear mongering, right? As like, you know, just essentially Luddites, right? Anybody Luddites? Anybody middle school history term? Luddites? All right, so there were these people, and they didn't like the fact that the new loom was going to put them out of work. And there was this particular guy, I think his name was John Ludd, and he riled all these people up, all these workers, all these people that did what the loom replaced, right? The loom came in and, you know, essentially replaced all these workers. And this guy Ludd and all of his followers, would call themselves the Luddites, or maybe just history called them the Luddites, went and like burned down a factory and a bunch of looms and stuff like that. Like, so from then on, any kind of hesitancy or, you know, reluctance to adopt or embrace technology has been castigated as, you know, being a Luddite movement or whatever, right? And what we have found over time is that the amount of new jobs that the new technology creates is more than the amount of jobs that the new technology replaces. That's what we have found over the last like 200 years. However, there's been a few different economic puzzles in the 21st century, one of them being productivity. There was a real slowdown in productivity after, you know, the information age and computers and everything. Right, there was fax machines, and that sped stuff up because instead of sending letters back and forth, you could just send a contract and get it signed, and back, you know, business just increased speed. You know, internet age and stuff like that, you know, being able to like Zoom with your factory on the other side of the world and like get a full tour of everything and be able to like look and monitor stuff in real time abroad. I mean, that's only a modern invention. And during the beginning of this information age in the 90s and the, you know, beginning of the 2000s, everything was kind of going gangbusters, and we were having productivity gains of, you know, 5% a year, 4% a year, whatever the case may be. It has just like stagnated between like 0.5% and 1.5%. We had a crazy blip in the pandemic, but if we think about productivity, it seems like an amorphous, ephemeral term, right? What the heck does that even mean? Well, at the end of the day, productivity can be measured as our national output, right, which is our GDP. We're going to get to there, but our output. So how much stuff we make divided by the number of people working. And when I think I can even look at a graph instead of just making stuff up. When we look at labor productivity, we see a giant spike during COVID, which is very, kind of confusing at first until you realize, come on, internet. Oh, you're the worst. That's what happens when I try to look at charts on the fly. All right, shouldn't have done that. Okay, the point that I'm trying to make is that we had, these different bouts of productivity, and then it kind of plummeted for a little bit, like I said, during that 90s, 2000s kind of period, and it was low, and we didn't understand why it was, and then it shot up during the pandemic and then came back down. The reason why it shot up during the pandemic has to do with this equation right here. The number of people working decreased dramatically. It wasn't that we were necessarily more productive. It's an artifact of the way that we measure productivity. So, that all being said, I'm uncertain what's going to happen with this next wave of automation. My best advice to most people worried about it is, embrace it, learn how to use it, learn how to wield it, learn how to fact check it, learn how to code, learn how to wield it. That history says is your greatest bet of kind of future-proofing, your career and yourself, right? And actually, we did just start. Matthew Bowers on campus here started a coding club. So if anybody is interested in that, we can refer you in the right direction, right? But yeah, it's going to be interesting. There's going to be a lot of office tasks. There might be a lot of paralegal stuff that's going to be replaced by this kind of automation. So, and the interesting thing is, an increase in automation could be seen two ways. It could be seen as an increase in the cost of my capital, right? Because it's an increase in software, which means increase in intellectual capital, which means increase in my capital. And it also means an extra, something that I have to pay every month, right? Just like businesses have to pay for Microsoft accounts and stuff like that for their employees, Zoom accounts and stuff, right? They have to pay for, these different AI automation integrations, right? But it could be argued that that increase in that software is going to come concomitant at the same time with a decrease in the labor. And so that's actually a very interesting, nuanced question that I probably wouldn't ask you on an exam because it is so nuanced. But you could argue that an increase in automation would actually result in a decrease in the cost of factors of production. Questions on inputs. So to get back to our actual topic of supply, although again, I love these tangents, I really do. So supply is going to be upward sloping, and anytime we have, let's just stick with this decrease in labor, right? Anytime we have a decrease in any kind of cost of one of our factors of production, so a decrease in labor, which is a decrease in the cost of our factors of production, which is going to result in a increase in my supply.
I get a question about that.
Yeah.
So you're lowering the amount of people you have working, but the people that you are hiring to do those jobs now have to get paid more because there's more technical skill required. I'm guessing that the overall cost is going to be less for that?
That remains to be seen. That's why it's a nuanced question. You know what I mean? Like that's why economists are kind of like still like, I don't know. You know, like I don't like. Again, if we look historically at kind of what has trued out over the past, right? You know, through the Luddite movement, through the, you know, when the internet came about, everyone was like, oh my God, the libraries are going to be dead, right? And I mean, to be fair, libraries are definitely like limping along, renting movies out and stuff like that. You know what I mean? But the increase in productivity and information and ability that the internet brought with it was way more than the jobs that it displaced, right? Like, I don't know if you guys know this, but travel agents used to be a thing. You used to, you know, contact somebody to arrange your vacation for you because you didn't have the internet.
You mean just like house phones?
Yeah, house phones and stuff like that. Absolutely. Right. 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 But those companies adapted.
Yeah.
Right? You know, AT&T started a cell phone network company and stuff like that. You know what I mean? So, but you know, it was a lot of like independent mom and pop travel agents, and there were some main ones, some international ones and stuff like that, and they just lost their demand overnight because why would I pay somebody some money on top of what I'm already paying them when I can just do it myself over the internet, or you know, I guess you could call to make a flight. Yeah.
I have to go. I have to pick my daughter up from
Okay.
school.
Yeah, no worries.
I don't have no one to pick her up.
Okay, yeah, you're all good. You can, yeah, absolutely. I'll post the rest of this.
It's all the way on the other side of town.
No worries. I'll post this up onto YouTube.
Oh, okay. Where's your links at?
I will also post those. I apologize.
Yeah, 'cause I was like looking for your links.
Okay, perfect. I will do that. I'm sorry. I've been behind on that. Thank you. All right. What is the next shift that we want to talk about? Well, let's